Once again, if you want to be heard, if you want to be heard on one of the bills, the sign-up sheet still up here at the podium. Better late than never, Senator Brass. I'm going to have Dr. Watson, if you'll open us up in a word of prayer. You're mic number 2.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us go to prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for looking over us in our travels and help us keep us safe in this weather, and help us be wise and have great discernment and with brevity. And just thank you, Lord, for looking over us. In Christ's name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Brevity, huh? Welcome to Judiciary. All right, we have 2 bills on the agenda today. I'm going to start with Senate Bill 32. I'll ask Senator Brass to come forward, and if you will stand at the podium up here. And to make sure we are all on the same page, there was a substitute that came a little late on this bill. And so I included in your folder the original bill and the substitute. And if nobody has an issue, the bill will still be available today to be moved on, but I will let the author explain the changes that were made. We're working off, tell me if this is correct, LC 364581S. Is that what you have? Correct. Does everybody have that bill in their folder? All right. Dr. Brass.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to say the substitute did come in late. I do apologize for that, but that was the chairman had a couple questions, and so let me kind of walk through that real quick. Section 1 of this bill was just basically some cleanup language, and the chairman, with all his wisdom, decided to clean up the cleanup language, and so that's basically all we did. So now the bill, really what it does is, under current law, public employees are exempt from certain public disclosures. Now, I'll kind of briefly list those. They're anything that reveals the public employee's home address, home telephone number, personal mobile or wireless telephone number, day and month of birth, social security number, insurance information, medical information, mother's birth name, credit card info, debit card, bank account, any password used, financial data, and information other than compensation by a government agency. So these are public type stuff that state employees are exempt from, county employees are exempt from, and municipal employees are exempt from. And in order to get that exemption, all you do is, as a state employee or one of these other government employees, you simply go down to your local county office. They have a form you fill out, and then your name can be removed, say off the, if you don't want it showing up on the tax records or whatever, you can take it off of there. All we're doing here is we're adding federal employees to that list, and the reason I brought this bill is based on the location of my district and our proximity to the airport. We actually have a decent amount of federal employees in the 28th district, and a couple of them had come to me that had gone down to try to get this exemption and were denied. So they had reached out to me and asked me if I would look into it, and so we researched and looked into it with Ledge Counsel, and here's the bill. So that's it in a nutshell. If y'all want to get in the weeds, have at it.
So on the first page of the bill, that is simply being cleaned up to make sure that home telephone number includes a cell phone number. Is that right?
Correct. If you look at the if you look down at, let me find it on the sub, line 15, starting at unlisted telephone number, if so designated in a public record. That was some cleanup language that Ledge Counsel felt like actually needed to move up to that line 10 on our original version, because I guess wireless and all that and cell phone wasn't included in the original law, and so somebody came in and added that later, but it was she felt like it should have been moved up a little bit. So that's what we were attempting to do there. But based on a conversation with the chairman, he thought it could read like we were actually trying to expand what was exempt, and that was not the intent. And so we got that cleaned up. So that's what you see in the sub.
Any questions for the author of the bill? Is the sign-up sheet still up there on the podium? I didn't get it yet. You mind hand that to Patrick?
It is. This is going to be a long night.
Oh, man. Anybody want to be heard on this bill? No, helped him write his bill. That didn't help him get dressed today.
That's the first joke to come out of a judiciary.
Does anybody have, gosh, it's throwing me off. I'll entertain a motion this time.
Move to pass.
We have a motion to pass by Senator Cowsert and a second by Senator Kennedy. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. We have 6-0. The motion carries. If you want to sit at one of the numbers so I can call on the other one. All right, we now move on to Senate Bill 54. I'll ask Senator Harbison if you'd like to come to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate your time, and I bring to you Senate Bill 54. And my efforts to deal with this issue grew out of a tragic situation in Columbus, Georgia, that involved a stalking of one parent over the other. In this case, a man stalking a woman, and the lady eventually sought to get a divorce, and apparently had filed for that, and in the midst of getting the divorce, had attempted to go back home and retrieve some clothing in order to leave and break it clean, but apparently she was discovered by the attacker. In this case, came in and killed her and murdered her. There were children involved, and there was already conflict between both families, and each side, the man and the husband, the man and the wife. And when the man was charged with murder, he went to the authorities or summoned a lawyer and drew up papers to give his children to his side of the family, and excluded the other side of the family. And the other side of the family, the grandparents, we've dealt with that a lot. Just having a fit about trying to see the children, loving the children, and that kind of thing. And this grew out of that. This is an effort to address that and perhaps give some clarity to when one parent murdered the other parent, at least until the case is adjudicated or dealt with, this would come into play, and at least the judge would be given the discretion to deal with it based on the facts presented in that. And with that, Mr. President, with that, Mr. Chairman, I submit it to you and members of the committee and ask for your approval.
Thank you, Senator. One of the concerns that I had about the way the bill is drafted, and the reason we had as a hearing only to give us time to get some feedback from the family law bar on this, it's my understanding in the code that when it comes to parental rights, if you're going to affect the parental rights of either parent, and so the situation where one parent passes by law, as this code section says, automatically the other parent keeps custody of a kid unless it's been terminated. There's a whole separate procedure for terminating those rights, most of which gets directed through the juvenile courts. And so my concern is the way it's drafted, I think it may actually confuse the issue, because it's drafted as if a court will look at the best interest of a child in making this determination, when actually there's a whole separate process of a termination of parental rights that has a whole different standard that this has to get sent to. And so all that to say, I want to, if anybody in the committee has any questions or thoughts on that, what I'd like for us to do in the next week is to get some feedback from folks in the family law bar and make sure we get this right, because I'm wondering if this ought to instead go in our juvenile code with the process we have for these kind of hearings versus being put in Title 19. Does anybody have any questions for the author on this bill? Okay. Senator Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. That's such a sad story. How awful. When you were working with the lawyers that you worked with to get this drafted, did they feel like it just wasn't clear enough in the code that the judge had that discretion already?
Apparently, I asked when I approached Legislative Council, I presented the narrative similar to what I gave here today, and based on that, he drew up this version of what we could do to alleviate that situation and avoid this kind of scenario in the future. And I went by that based on his lawyer expertise, and I'm sure I could stand whatever, perfection we can offer to the situation. I'm just trying to find a way to help people who would be affected by similar circumstances.
Thank you.
Julius, did
Thank
you
you.
work on this bill? We have him on Zoom again, our Ledge Council. Okay. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts now, if you want to talk offline, but that was my concern is, my understanding is it's going to take, in this situation, if somebody wanted to challenge the rights of the surviving parent, they'd have to go through a process to actually terminate that parent's rights, and that would not be under Title 19. Well, Title 19 defines that, but I think that'd be under Title 15, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think when I first got the question was focused on just delaying the hearing, but I think that you are in essence terminating a parent's rights. So that probably would be more appropriate under the juvenile code, and it would help to get some feedback from experts in that space too.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I turned it up too loud for that. Senator Parent, do you have something else?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So somehow I've now gotten more confused. So like there's custody versus termination of rights. Those are two totally separate things.
Correct.
And I'm correct, right, that you don't necessarily terminate the rights of every person who is found guilty of murder and goes to prison.
That's
So-
correct.
So don't we kind of need to decide what our objective is and think of it that way? I mean, is the objective custody? Is it termination of rights? That would seem like a much bigger animal to try to get our hands on if it's termination of rights. I don't think that's what the senator is really concerned about.
My understanding of, and you tell me if this is correct, what you're trying to accomplish is,
Delay.
well, in
Until after the
essence, the
sentencing.
court could issue a temporary order versus being a final order while a case is pending. And so while like someone being arrested, awaiting trial, or the facts of a case may lead a court to temporarily terminate somebody's parental rights, this bill would give the court the discretion to do basically a temporary order and leave the case open until the case is finalized. Is that right? Just to make sure that just because you're charged with a crime doesn't mean you shouldn't have rights to your child on a long-term basis.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And hopefully that would deal with situations like that in the
Okay,
future.
and so my thought is we'll look at this, but it may be best if we put that, there's already a section there, Title 15, that deals with the death of a parent where somebody's charged, I think, with manslaughter. I believe it's already in there. It might be we want to put something in that section that would address the ability of court to issue temporary orders if they don't already have that authority, or at least restate that. But I get what you're trying to do. I think it's, in my mind, it's a great policy to push, just a matter of making sure we get it right. Senator Jones, did you have something? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just along those same lines. I guess there is a difference between the termination and the just seeking custody. But if Title 15 is addressing this issue, then I'd like have the opportunity maybe to look at it and see. Now I see where you're going, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, my thought is you really have a third-party claim for custody, which is completely different than a custody between two parents, because you have a whole different constitutional standard that gets put in. That's where you get into termination cases. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add? Any other questions for the author? Nothing from the doctors? Y'all are quiet. Okay. I'm calling y'all. No one signed up to be heard on the bill. Does anybody want to be heard on this? Do you have anything else, Senator? Do you want to?
No, that was it, and just look to perfect the bill and
Okay.
perhaps solve a problem.
And thank you for bringing this. And one of the things that, just in my time, even being in Judiciary in the House or Senate, we have family law bills. We like to get some feedback from the family law section. There's not a lot of people here that work in that area. There's not a lot of interest groups that engage with us on a regular basis on family law matters. And so getting the bar involved a little bit is usually helpful. So I invite some folks to give us feedback on this, and hopefully we can get this bill moved out maybe the next
Please
week or
do.
so.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything before we finish up? That's all we have on today's agenda. Our intent is to have our regular meeting, full judiciary, on Monday at our 2:15 time. We have a good amount of bills we want to go and start moving. And of course, keep our time next Wednesday. I've asked our two subcommittee chairs, Chairman Calzert and Kennedy, to go ahead and start setting up some subcommittee meetings in addition to that. So pay attention to your notices. We have a few bills that are going to work in subcommittee probably next week as well. Otherwise, I will see everybody on Monday. Thank you so much.